After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, Here am I. He said, Take your son, your only begotten son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him these as burnt offering upon one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place in which God had told him. On the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. Then Abraham said to the young men, Stay here with the donkey. I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father, Abraham, my father. And he said, Here am I, my son. He said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. Then Abraham put forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He said, Here am I. He said, Do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only begotten son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of the place, The Lord will provide, as it is said to this day, On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. Today we see a ram, and we read the story of God's test to Abraham. God instructed Abraham to offer his son Isaac with a sacrifice. This test is not easy for us to understand, but God had promised Abraham that he would have descendants through Isaac. So Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his beloved son shows he trusted that somehow Isaac would live. St. Paul tells us he considered that God was able to raise men even from the dead. When God saw that Abraham's faith had passed the test, he stayed Abraham's hand and instead provided for the ram and for the sacrifice. Nearly 2,000 years later, God himself, in his great love for humanity, offered his own beloved son as a sacrifice. Isaac, who carried wood for sacrifice up on the mountain, reminds us of Jesus, who carried the wooden cross up to the mountain of Golgotha. Oh God, help us to, in our whole hearts, not reversing any part of our lives from you. Help us to grow in faith and trust and to love you more and more.